Welcome to Feeling Beings Who Think, a podcast project that seeks to find wisdom in conversation through the stories and personal reflections of regular people like you and me. My name is Ariane Rice, and I'm really grateful you're here. So let's get started. When I say the word wisdom, maybe you, like me, go straight to a place of concepts. Wisdom is what we know, knowledge. It's all that is in our heads. Yet one of the phrases that has come to mean something to me is the phrase embodied wisdom. That wisdom isn't just in our heads. It's part of who we are. It's body, mind, spirit, soul, heart. The wisdom we have inside of us is something that we manifest in the world. Here's a quote from Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This is from a blog post he wrote on how to meditate. We can't be grounded in our body if our mind is elsewhere. We each have a body that has been given us by the earth. This body is a wonder. In our daily lives, we may spend many hours forgetting the body. We get lost in our computer or in our worries, fear, or busyness. Walking meditation makes us whole again. Only when we are connected with our body are we truly alive. Healing is not possible without that connection. So walk and breathe in such a way that you can connect with your body deeply. End quote. Well, I thought a lot about Thich Nhat Hanh after my conversation with Marietta Vis. She joined me to talk about the work she does in supporting people grow their capacities by utilizing the wisdom of their body, understanding where their longings are in their body, where their wisdom is in their body, and how our experiences shape our bodies and how our bodies show up in the world. I'm not going to say too much more about it. I hope you will listen to her explain what it is she does, and I hope you will come away just a little bit more aware of the connection and the wisdom that can be found in your body and how it moves in the world. Thanks so much for listening. Hello there, Marietta Vis.
Hi, so good to see you, Ariana.
It's good to see you too, and it's lovely to hear my name in your beautiful accent, which prompts the immediate question of Vis. I was saying Vis in my mind, but it's Vis, and you're from the Netherlands. So just say a little bit say your name again and a little bit about where you're from.
Yeah, it's funny because I mentioned before, I got my diploma from the somatics school, Richard Strozzi, and a lot of people say Vis, I even can say it, and it means dirty in Dutch. So that's not my name. My name is Vis, and it Marietta Vis, and it just means fish. The word vis means
really,
yeah.
So is it a family? Is there family history with it then? Were they fishermen?
There were definitely a lot of what do you call them? Shipper people.
People who worked on ships?
On ships and kind of bringing goods from one place to the next on ships. That's part of the family. It's a common name, and it's probably related to something with fish for sure.
Well, you and I have that in common then, because my last name is Rice, which is a food. So here we are with our foodie last names. So where in the Netherlands?
I moved to DC 10 years ago from Amsterdam. So I only do capitals now.
Nice.
Capitals. Yeah, and it's not where I grew up. I grew up in a village near The Hague, and The Hague is where our government is. It's a city with, it's kind of like DC more. And it's where I used to work too. I went to school there, and I used to work for a government for a long time. Yeah, small village. My dad had a bicycle shop. He was 13 when his dad asked him to come and work for him. And he did that till he was 73. He had the shop. So, yeah.
Like for cyclists kind of bicycle shop?
Cyclist, yeah.
Although when I was in Amsterdam, like the amount of cyclists that could all of a sudden be on a street was vast. Like cycling is not it's different. It's like a way of life and how people got around the city.
Yeah, everyone has 1 or 2 bikes. I think I have 3 here for myself here, and it's just such an easy way of transportation. And the country is small, right, and flat.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps.
So now I'm wondering, I'm like, okay, so she's a somatics coach, and her father had this cycling shop, and that is a very well, you have to make use of your body in order to bicycle.
Yeah.
Because you also said you had worked in the government.
Yeah.
So then I think, well, what is it that brings somebody from working in the government to being a somatics coach? And I know that there are going to be people listening to this that do not know what a somatics coach is. It's something I didn't even know until a couple of years ago. So please tell us what that is and what you do.
Yeah. Well, somatics has the word soma in it, which is the body, right? And we can think of the body. Usually we think of it as to do sports with, right? To be an athlete, or kind of how it looks, to put it on a cover of a magazine if you look really good. But this is the body as we all experience ourselves. And I usually say, if what's going on with us on a deeper level, we can't work on that by just thinking about it, because it just doesn't touch the essence of who we are. I mean, your podcast name is about that, right?
Well, it is, but it's taken me a long time to get there. I used to think everything could get figured out just by thinking about it.
Yeah, you're not alone there, right? Because I think that's what we learn. That's what we learn, because that keeps us safe. It's the feelings are scary, right? Sometimes even
they're very scary, and being in one's body, even that in and of itself. I mean, I think I even came to an awareness of the value of emotions and the wisdom within emotions. I came to that before I'm still wrestling a little bit with the idea of wisdom to be found in the body and connecting the wisdom of the body to what I'm thinking and feeling.
Right. Well, that's great. That's a great curiosity.
So say more about what that is and what those words mean, and what drew you into wanting to teach in that.
Oh my, that's like opening up a whole big jar here.
Yay!
So. And the teaching part, I coach, I teach, but I worked at the University of Leiden where I taught psychology. And I think, I went to study psychology because I'm so fascinated by us humans. Like, what are we? How are we? I could stand when I was young looking at the window and I see people and would wonder about how everyone looks so different and what's all that difference. And so I had that curiosity a long time. Psychology was fun. It kind of disappointed me because it was just it forgot the body. There was no body included in psychology. And then I choose theoretical psychology. So that says something about me, because I had learned to totally move away from being connected to my body, as most of us, right, have that journey. I think one way to say that, the wisdom of the body, if you look at life and how you're experiencing life and how you're loving life or you're not so much loving life, is there a stuckness? Do you feel you're on purpose? You have joy, you experience life to the fullest, or, it's challenging times and there's a lot to worry about. So if you bring the body into that domain of just how do I live my life? How do I experience that? And how can I fully be present? That is an embodied practice. So as a coach, right, I work with people who want to change something because that's why they come to coaching. There's stuckness. You can then look at, all the analytical ways of like, okay, where do you want to go? What's your goal? Where are you now? I really like to then dive into sensing, listening within to what does your body tell you about your life now, and doing a practice where you could tap into what do I long for, right? A longing has a different impact on us, to touch base with our longing. And okay, let's say I have a goal. My goal is to do X or Y or whatever. But a longing is more about, what makes my heart sing? That in itself, to allow yourself to feel into that is not a given for a lot of people. Because if you learn to shield your heart because of life's experiences, made it more safe for you to not be in touch with that level of sensing in your body. No wonder then at a certain age you're like, what is it that I long for? I don't know. What I love about this work really is that it is quite simple to go back to that, because we all have that capacity. We all have a body. We all are able to access it. So it's simple. It's just, it requires practice. It requires dedication and some support.
So, and maybe like sometimes your muscles have to experience something a few times to like generate the memory of it in your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know some of the story that brought you to that.
Yeah. I would say I was someone who, when things got rough for me, or I felt like I was under pressure, being young, my go-to safe place was to withdraw myself, right? There's different strategies for that. Some people are going to fight, or, the fight, flight, freeze kind of, and appease. For me, it was withdrawal, like just to go by, just go into my room and figure it out by myself, and then it's kind of a lonely place to being with like emotions that you're not able to kind of process. So going forward, that's kind of when I was really young. And then I was very much, I'm ambitious in a way that I love to learn and understand and develop myself. And I'm not so ambitious in a hierarchical way, but more in a depth way.
Yes.
Yeah. So I tend to push myself, that's probably another safety mechanism, to feel like, okay, if I'm seen, I'm safe. If I push myself to do good and to do well, I'm safe. So long story short, when I was like early 40s, I just crashed. I had a huge burnout.
Can I ask what you were doing specifically, like what your work was?
Yeah, so I was a consultant for government. I was first like teaching psychology at the university. And I've always been doing the work, the quality of my work was that I liked it intellectually, but I didn't have a felt sense of joy with the work I was doing. Mm-hmm. Some moments, not like I wasn't ever joyful, but
right.
It was not fulfilling for me at all. It didn't come back to me. I kind of see that when you're doing something you love and it's coming from a place of meaning making for you, then you can loop that to outside and back in. And for me, that loop was gone. There was nothing there. So I felt depleted. I did a lot of organizational change work, OD work for governments, like management teams. And even though I liked the part of working with the people and the teams, I also at that point had not learned how to feel what's mine, what's theirs. So I took everything and I took care of everything, and I kind of overloaded myself. And I longed to, at that time, I longed for work where I could like build on something that was mine. Like I didn't have that. I did whatever was asked of me. Uh-huh. It's like, can you do this? Never done it. Yeah, I can do that. It's like, it's that. And then it's a lot of pushing and a lack of ease that totally burned me down. And, with that young kids having a move, one of my kids couldn't sleep for like a half a year. So there's always stacking of experiences, of course, for that moment to arise when, you're realizing I can't take this anymore. I went to a therapist, which, is a common place to go in such a moment. And, but it was a cognitive behavioral therapist. I got just in those sessions. She was probably a really good therapist, but for me, it was so reiterating that tendency to go in my head and try to figure it out, have internal dialogues, disconnected from my body. My heart was like already I was like, do I have something? Like, is there something wrong with my heart? Because I would wake up and feel like, I'd been sprinting or something. And so it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But the wisdom of the body is like, when I was in those sessions, I realized this is the wrong direction for me. And at that time, I was really bad at saying no or declining or saying what I needed. So it was a huge thing for me in hindsight that I said, this doesn't work for me. Uh-huh. Because I was used to taking care of the other person and her feelings instead of myself, So I think that's also how the wisdom of the body shows up, like an inner knowing that is a felt sense. I think that the essence of this work is, are you able to work to hear that whisper? They say the whisper of the body, right? Because the outside world screams all day long, but how can you listen in and touch base with what you need?
So there's two questions I have, and the one question though has to do with how your body's responding under stress. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have an answer, but your body is letting you know it needs help. So on the one hand, you start making changes because you're cognizant of that. But I'm wondering, I'm making an assumption that there was also an experience at some point, maybe after you discovered Strozzi, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, where you had an experience in your body of sort of the opposite, like your body wasn't letting you know it was scared and traumatized. Your body was saying like, thank you. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. For me, that came through a 3-year yoga teacher training. I tend to, when I like something, I just jump into a training.
Yes, you and I share that.
And, and you're right, there's this, we have these, as you know, right, two systems in our body almost, like there's a neural system. It has a part where it's taking care of us in danger, and there's a part where it's taking care of us in safety, and it's us, right? It's within us. So yeah, the stress activation was like full on. And, one of the qualities there is that you can't think creatively, you have tunnel vision, actually become kind of a little bit dumber, you don't, not until you relax and open up, which is a resource of the body. We have to relearn how to enter that space, because if you're running on stress and overwhelm for so long, you don't know how to get back to that place. And that's really sad, because then you get tighter in your body. My muscles, I could not relax my muscles. You snap easy when things are going wrong. It's a very dark place to be. And you're right, that place to return to, which is also in our body, it doesn't present itself to us as an option in those moments. So what I did, actually, I went with my friend to a yoga week. And that was before I did the yoga training. Okay, it was in Greece. I lived in Amsterdam, so it's easy to relax on a Greek. But doing something like an embodied practice as yoga, where through stretching, there's relaxing happening, there's surrendering happening. And I realized at the end of the week, I started to feel like almost like I melted a little bit, or the tension in my body had melted away a little bit. I could see kind of the sun. There was sun, but I could see it also. I could feel the light in myself. And I knew, there was this deep longing for that place. Of course, then I went back to the Netherlands. The Netherlands is not so sunny in October, right? There's a lot of rain and gray. And the door slammed closed again. It was so hard to, I don't know. Somehow I then ended up in a yoga studio with a methodology that is super aligned to my work as somatic coach now, because it's really about what patterns do we have in our movement that keep us from feeling or moving certain parts. And for a lot of people, that's let's say the mid part of your back, the thoracic spine. You have the neck, and then the lumbar spine below, and in the middle. It happens also to be the place where our heart lives, right?
Right.
And of course, doing that yoga training, I went, somehow I made the decision to go in a full-on training for 3 years, which meant like a lot of hours and a lot of biking to the studio from one part of Amsterdam to the other. Yeah, that really brought me kind of let's say, it was almost like a therapy, but then without talking, but just being on the mat and being with yourself in difficult moments where the difficulty was not outside world things, but was like, how can I stand in a shoulder stand for 15 minutes? Yeah.
Just one of the things you're making me remember is in my 20s, I went to a yoga class. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember what I thought about it, but the next day I wound up, because I was walking so briskly in downtown Boston, I tripped and I dislocated my elbow and was therefore unable to do yoga.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, at least 20 to 25 years later that I did yoga again. But I often think, not that I'm glad I had that accident, I wasn't like ready for yoga in my 20s.
Yeah.
To me, it had everything to do with just a way I wanted my body to look. When I came to it in my 40s, I was a little more broken of a person.
Mm.
Not that I'm saying you were broken as a person, but what I heard in some of your story was, you kind of had this burnout experience and your body was, I don't know, maybe not as defended.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes if you come into a situation that is embodied with some of those defenses already down because you just can't keep them up anymore, I don't know, there is more of a sort of willingness to fully enter into it and let it teach you.
Yeah. And dislocated elbow sounds very painful.
It was very painful.
No, I hear you. And, there's also the other side to that, is that those are, right, the guards are safety mechanisms that are innate to us. I just actually wrote a newsletter about this. It's from when we're young, we're little babies. We need other people, preferably, our mom and dad, or, whoever caregiver we have to feel safe. So what we have now that may get in the way of us relaxing and be fully present stems from a very healthy, wise way of our bodies to keep us safe. I would say, when you want to work with this, it's really first seeing that as wise and seeing that as very capable way of your body to keep you safe. Have appreciation for that in yourself. Because if you start to work at it and try to do it differently, and then it's almost like you're building a shield over a shield, right? If you don't dissolve kind of the need for that safety that when you were little was very different than how you are now, right? Now you have different capacities and different capabilities. The thing is, it just lives in our cells and tissues, and it's automated because over the years we've practiced that one thing: to suppress our feeling, to not ask for what you want, to not cry because you were told to not cry, don't get angry, right? So yes, then we listen to that because not by a conscious choice, but by an inner sensing or neuroceptivity where we know, okay, there's danger if I don't do this. We don't know it, our system knows it. It's a really magical thing, actually, that automatically we orient towards safety.
You used a word there that I didn't quite know.
Neuroception, yeah.
Say what that is, please.
So it comes from the work of Porges' polyvagal work. And polyvagal is really about the nervus vagus, which is a nerve, the wandering nerve, they call it. It's really the connection, you could say, between the mind brain and the body brain. And of course, it's all one, right? We in language say, oh, our mind or our body. No, it's like it's one thing, right? Plus, we are one thing. As I'm here with you, we are connected through our nervous systems. So that nerve is sensing, but the neuroception is not a conscious kind of sensing. It's kind of below our conscious awareness. So he phrased the term neuroception to distinguish that this happens without us knowing all the time. So when I meet someone new, you know how you have that feeling if someone is to be trusted, or if you can move closer, if you want to share something intimate, or you're like, something in you pulls you back a little bit. I think everyone has that experience where that's so clear.
Well, you said something too when you were talking about in your earlier days when you were trying to please everybody and do everything. You said something that's very interesting that I don't think we often think about, is you didn't really know where you ended and other people began.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that and what that means to you?
Yeah. I think I know I'm very sensitive. And that was also part of why I needed kind of the shielding, so to speak, because I didn't know what to do with all that feeling. I pick up a lot, I think there's a difference. Some people are maybe more sensitive than others. Maybe
I relate to that. I also feel that I pick up a lot.
Yeah. And then it's, how do you know what to do with that? I didn't know. I didn't know. And I also didn't know that what I was feeling wasn't actually always mine.
Yes.
And now it's a gift, right? I coach people, and when I work one-on-one or I work in groups, I pick up, and I am now, through the work that I've done over the past 15 years, really, with somatic practices, yoga, to understand my story, my narrative, my shaping, what it feels like to me. I clearly feel now this is not mine. It's never confused anymore. But that wasn't the case before. Let's say when I was 40, I'm 55 now. So yeah, I would have a meeting, like I would guide a conversation with a management team, have deep conversations with them, all this stuff happening in between people, right? We communicate energy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just communicate words. There's energy moving through us and impacting other beings. That's the trust thing I just talked about, right? It's like, how do you feel in my system? Does this feel safe? It's not just about the other person. It's also about your personal history.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would go home and I would just be so full with all these things I tried to figure out. Oh, this person said that. That's what happened. I saw this. I saw that. And I don't know. It was just kind of, I thought it was the impact they had on me, and that was all mine. And I needed to just calm myself down, or, I don't know if that's a clear description, but it just.
No, it is. I mean, it is. And I think, a lot of the training in the clergy world has to do with, we utilize this phrase, being a non-anxious presence, and the ability to walk into stressful situation and be calm. But I'm not sure we get enough sort of instruction or talk a little bit more about how it really, we take on these feelings in our bodies. For whatever reason, you're reminding me of, in different situations where I've worked, where I've simply asked somebody to like put their hands on their heart.
Yeah.
And that seems to like change everything. And it's such a simple practice, and doing that can, even if we're not talking about something incredibly deep, can all of a sudden like make somebody cry.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was when I started really understanding how much is stored in us that we're so distant from.
Yeah. I love that intuition, that comes from, I would say, the wisdom of your body, that you felt there was a need to put the hand on the body. And usually we feel it in ourselves. There may be something that you feel like an urge to touch your heart. And then, and I love how you then invited someone to do that. And you're so right. It requires practice. You could say, I always kind of make the comparison, ugly comparison, but there's a five-lane highway. And then the new thing, so you know exactly which exit and where to get off and how to do all that. And you don't have to think about it, it just goes naturally. And then the new thing is like, even a jungle, there's not even a pathway at first. Each time you go through it, you kind of clear the path, and there's some sort of a pathway. But it takes a while for that to be a route that you can then take over and over. And it doesn't have to be a highway. I'd rather have the jungle, but it's just to kind of see that it's we need the practice to embody the new way of being. And if you talk about non-anxious presence, it also reminds me of this workshop I was in this last weekend, where there were a lot of therapists, and they said they were taught to be a neutral presence. It may be similar. And they were kind of upset by that in hindsight, because they feel like if you present neutral, but you're not neutral, because who's neutral?
Right. How can you possibly be neutral?
Yeah. So you can say, okay, I'm not going to pretend to be calm or appear calm. Someone picks up on how you're really feeling. So it's actually pretty, I would say, and they said it's damaging, and it signals danger for the person perceiving you if you're pretending to be different than you are. I would say what helps us all to be a trusted person, if you can be with your feelings, no matter what they are, you give kind of a signal of, hey, I'm feeling not so great myself, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. Or, you don't even have to speak that, but it's about presence, and being centered is not about feeling great and restful and calm. It's actually having capacity to feel and to be with emotions that are hard for you to still present yourself. Instead of you have to leave, you go, or you fight, flight, and freeze. There we go again with those. And that's a practice, yeah.
Well, I just want to pause because I think
Yeah.
something you said is very important and needs to be said again.
Okay.
It's that ability to, like, all of a sudden, or to choose to be in your body and give a certain quality of attention to your body is not necessarily about being calm, meditative. And I think that's what we always associate or assume is going to happen. It's simply allowing for whatever it is you are feeling to be.
Yeah.
And for you to let it be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, especially maybe if it's uncomfortable.
Especially if it's uncomfortable, especially if there's no answers. Yeah. Especially if there's nothing you can necessarily do.
Yeah. You know, and it doesn't always have to be, let's say, the less positive emotions or less pleasant emotion or unpleasant emotion. For some, it's joy, right? If you're told to not be like, oh, you know, don't express yourself in such a dramatic way. So it can be, it's very personal and unique. I actually love that about this work I do, because it's a creative process to distinguish what is it for you? How does it show up in your life? And how is it connected to your shaping history? And shaping is literal, you know, it lives in your body. So there's a shaping to it. What are the stories you tell yourself that you are not necessarily aware of, but then when you do a practice where you put pressure on someone to kind of for them to distinguish, how am I under pressure? And what is that line that comes up for you now? You know, for me, it's I don't see you is very activating for me. And we all have a very personal story with that. That's why I think, you know, I love working now in community and having a group work with it together, because there's this term co-regulation that is about, like, again, from a nervous system perspective, if you're calm, so I understand the message, you know, non-anxious presence, but it requires, as you say, practice and building the capacity to be more and more of a container for everything that's disturbing. Right? You can't just say, okay, let's turn that switch. It's really hard. And I get activated. Now I don't have to run away, which I usually do. When I started working with Strozzi and I did my first training there, it was so intense for me that for me personally, with my shaping, that I had to go to the hall to kind of calm myself. Wow. I couldn't do it in presence. And now I step into community to do this work because I feel that's where it is. That's where our healing happens. From being able to share that story and be with it differently, because there's other people in the work that are receiving and witnessing you. That's when things start to shift. Not by reading a book about it. Right. Watching a video, right? It's tempting to go there when we want to learn something, but you're right, this is work of practice. And when I said earlier, it's easy, it's simple, it's not easy, it's simple. That's the hardest part. How do you do that, the practices? Yeah. I want to share an experience I had in the class you led that I attended online. Yeah. Which amazes me too, how this somatic stuff works when we're not even in the same room, and yet you still can pick up and feel. But towards the end of the class, you had us, we could either sit or stand or lay down on the floor or lean up against a wall. Yeah. And I chose to lean up against a wall, which right in and of itself is kind of a unique position for my body to be in. It's not often that I'm mindfully leaning against a wall or paying attention to it. And then you talked about thinking about support, like this wall, this floor is supporting you. And you encouraged us, it's my memory of it, you encouraged us to really sense in our bodies how we were being supported, how we were feeling that in our bodies. And then you said, now think about this physical sensation and awareness in connection with your desire to be supported in certain areas of your life. And I was like, holy blank word that I'm not going to say, because all of a sudden it truly was a very different way of thinking about support. Like on the one hand, it was very literal, but it was also
like this would be a muscle memory in my body for when I knew I needed to give myself support, or when I needed the courage maybe to ask somebody for support, or maybe when I needed the permission to lay on the floor and just physically allow myself to be supported for a few minutes. I don't know, that was hugely helpful for me.
Yeah.
And to me really was an experience of what somatic learning is.
Beautiful. And yeah, like you say, you know, it really lives in a different cabinet or whatever in our body. You know, I say mind, body are connected, but it is true that we have a cognitive self-awareness or conceptual self-awareness and an embodied self-awareness. And you could say that the embodied self-awareness is in the moment always. It's kind of the presence, but it's a different way to distinguish those two. When we spend most of our time thinking back or thinking ahead, right? And then kind of living past, you know, gliding past the current moment. So what we did in that practice, and you so beautifully phrased and shared your experience, is to take a moment to experience the moment and relate it then to depth and what's at your back, and what is it even like to allow support to touch you? You know? It's there. I know it's there, but can I lean in? Lean in when it's getting really hard for me, and I feel I want to run away from everyone. So yeah, I love how that experience landed on you, and it really demonstrates, I think, beautifully the essence of the work. You know, it's experiencing and it's building on that experience.
What are ways for someone listening who's curious and wants to maybe experiment with practices or try out something on? What are things that you talk about with people when they're kind of like just dipping toes into this?
Well, for one, I do host like community sessions of practice. So that's something, and the website, we can post that, but it's
we'll post all that stuff.
Yeah, it's so that's one thing. And there's also a lot online available. The thing is with and apps and everything, the thing with these practices is you can do them, meditation, yoga, you can do them easily in a disembodied way, because like you said, you know, 20s and 40s, you were in a different place when you were trying out yoga. And with your elbow story, yeah, that's true. You can do it in a way that's about like outer, you know, everything. So disembodied or embodied. So you can be present to it, or you cannot be. So that's a distinction when you look for teachers online to feel into, like, is this including my present moment awareness? You know, and I also have some place for people to explore with me. Like I just offer 30 minutes on my calendar for people who are curious and interested about the work. Other things you could do apart from, you know, connecting to me is nature, right? It's nature, art, animals are kind of those ways for us to start to relax. You know, when you go on a walk, leave your headset a lot, you know, don't go. You know, lovely. I listen to your podcast in the woods, which is also lovely. Yet if you feel like the tension is building in your body, going outside and having a walk in the woods, preferably like with like the floor not being like cemented, or but yeah, that helps. Nature helps, art helps.
I mean, in some ways it's so much about choosing to have a quality of attention for a period of time. It's simply making a choice to kind of shift and be present in that type of way.
Yeah. And there's, you know, it's always a little bit of catch-22, because you need awareness to know that you need it. And when you're in it, I fall for that trap still. You know, it's when I need it the most, I want it the least. I don't have time to go outside. I don't have time.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something there where also finding people to practice with. That's why I host those community sessions, because it is kind of tough by yourself, and you need to break some kind of routine that you have always been in to do something new. So awareness, where are you? Breathing, right? I say forest and all that, and animals, you know, they make us relax. There's something about the muscle tension and the opening to breath that's very helpful. So take a deep breath. Also is the tunnel vision. You're very focused on self. We're connected. We're one, right? There's a oneness. can't deny it. It's not just us separately. We're connected to everything. That's actually a practice itself, to not only be present to you, but also be present to the other person you're with. Extending your presence is a practice in itself. And the more I open up and soften my muscles, the more I allow you to join me. You become that invitation. It's kind of the co-regulation again.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as like how anxiety is contagious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sort of the opposite of that is also equally as contagious. Isn't the right word. It's like they're waves. You're making me think of Thich Nhat Hanh and interbeing.
Yeah.
And just the awareness of that interconnectedness of all things at all times.
Absolutely. And, it is, I think contagious is kind of where we pick up on it, because that's our neuroception, actually, what you're describing. And if you ever worked with horses, I'm not an expert in that, but I've had the privilege of having some sessions with someone who hosts that kind of work. They are super sensitive as a herd animal. And when one horse, when one moves, the other one knows there's something to be on, and they don't have to check in, hey, how are you doing? No, they feel that, and they feel the energy of the group. And I don't know if herd was the right word for horses.
No, well, my daughter rides, and I'm always amazed. I rode for a very brief time when I was young, but she's been riding now, for 10 years. And it's all about what she's communicating through her body.
Right.
Some of it very directly, but oftentimes it seems it's more like her mindset.
Yeah.
If she's nervous about the jump that's coming up, the horse is going to be nervous about the jump that's coming up. And somehow he can sense that on her through that saddle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're the same, although like the difference with us and horses, I think, is that we've learned in our Western culture to ignore those signals. So they're still coming through. The neuroception is below the threshold of consciousness. So it comes through. But when our muscles are so tense, as was for me when I had a burnout, I could not relax my muscles. Some physical therapist was squeezing me, and I was just like holding on. Like I didn't know I had the capacity at that moment to soften, and then his grip would loosen too. And that's what happened. So then we don't feel. That's the whole purpose really of this shielding, to not feel.
Right.
We go up in our thinking. Where do we go when we're under stress? We start to think, and we're gonna, So and I think, it's not only, it's for personal well-being, and it's because it's great. And I love that I have this capacity now. And I'm so excited to share this with people, because it's really changed my life and the quality of my life. Ask my family too. But then it's also, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but if you look at the world, which we all know is on fire, literally, and there's so much happening, and we've become, insensitive, because if we can't feel our own signals, we're not able to feel other people's pain either. And to feel that we're all one, and that we need to do this together. So there's something also about that, a liberating of that small vision maybe of the world, and how we can impact others. I think it's a way forward, and it's also being very much more accepted, working through the body. People need it after the pandemic, after isolated, after going through grief, and going through a lot of societal injustices that have come much more to the foreground. It is kind of my hammer, than seasonal and everything. But I do believe it's because, like I said, it's not, you don't have to buy anything. You have a body. You are it. It's like, how can I take care of that differently for myself, for the sake of something bigger than me?
Well, and it's like that reciprocity, that sort of, I always picture like a water wheel, it's putting water in the next bucket, and then it just keeps turning, because yes, you're taking care of that body, and you're giving something into the world that is, I think, strengthening interconnectedness, and you will be enriched by new wisdom and awareness.
Yeah. And, that feeling of being in it together, because we are, right?
Yes.
But that feeling is also very nourishing to our souls, right? To not have to feel so alone with it and feel desperate about it. And there's I think it's an amazing way to connect to others, and it is never ending, and it's life's work, but at least you know what to do. And it's the capacity to live life to the fullest and be present to your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because now I do, I'm no different from everyone. I also, when sometimes I'm like, I feel like something happened, and I like, I'll just start to distract myself with just doing something on my phone. How often do we do that?
Yep.
Instead of finding distractions, building capacity to feel. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me and sharing. And you do, you lead and share beautifully. And it is wonderful how much you share generously with people who are interested. So we will have all the links. And I do hope people, I don't know, step out, because sometimes it's a comfort zone thing too.
Mm-hmm.
But it really, it is about the whole of us and this integrated sense of oneness with ourselves and with other people, and with kind of embodying that in ways that match what we say we believe.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's a joy.
I love talking about this. I feel very deeply about it. And I know, especially in one-on-one, also in groups, I do feel I have the capacity to invite people in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's ever scary to come to me to talk about this stuff.
No, it's not. I'll tell you right now, having just talked to you about it for almost an hour. All right. Well, until our paths cross again, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.